We're back with the 8th episode of the Anand Sahib, and this one is going to be looking at all about how grace plays such an important role in our life. In the 8th verse of Anand Sahib, Guruji starts by saying, "O Baba, to whom you give, that servant receives. That servant receives to whom you give. What can the helpless others do? One roams deluded and mistaken in 10 directions. Another progresses embracing the name. By Guru's grace, their mind emerges pure, who is pleased with divine will. Says Nanak, to whom you give, O beloved, that servant receives." So we see the theme of this verse continuing on from the last verse, which talked about how bliss comes from this Guru, is the gift of the Guru itself. And we get this message reiterated again, that only they receive it who are blessed to receive this. So what can anyone do? What can the helpless others do, the ones who don't receive Naam? Again, we're reminded that there is no room for the ego to feel a sense of superiority because of their own achievement in spirituality, and there's zero room for judgment towards anyone else. And this is where we need to start thinking about in our own life, have we ever felt superior, better, higher because we're on a spiritual journey, or because of anything that we've achieved in our life? When are the moments that we've looked down on others? Sometimes when I receive a message on social media, I might watch a video of someone who is falling down or making a mistake or doing something or acting in a way that I don't feel is in line with how I would act. And then you see all of your friends on your social media chats, and they're openly saying how foolish this person is, how stupid this person is, how ignorant some people can be. You can't believe that there are people like this in the world. And it's at those moments that I think we need to take a step back and realize that nobody is acting in a way that is in their control. Absolutely everyone is acting based on what they feel is right. Even if you think someone is doing the absolute worst thing in the world, even at that moment, you have to realize that for that person, what they think they're doing is absolutely right. And why they think they're doing that is based on years of conditioning, years of them living the life that they've lived. And we can never judge someone else because we've not lived their life. We've not walked in their shoes. We don't know all the things that have impacted them and molded them to become the person that they've become. So this idea of judging who we think we're better, whether we think we're better than someone else, is something that isn't just about spirituality, isn't just about things in life where you feel you're better than someone else. It's about reflecting at every opportunity where you see there's a chance for you to think about someone else, even if they're acting in the worst way, in ways that you could never imagine yourself doing. Use that as an opportunity to awaken yourself to realize that, hey, that could have been me. I could be that person acting in that way. Not me in the life that I'm in now, but me if I was born into the same house, into the same circumstances as that person there. So realize that we're all helpless. No one is actually capable of doing anything. Everyone is living out their actions based on all of the influences in their life, all the things that have led to them becoming who they are as a person. So there really is no room for judgment and ego on the spiritual path. And one of the questions that often arises when we're looking at other people and where we've made certain choices that we think we've made in our life to follow a certain path, to have a certain belief system, to have certain values, or to live by certain principles, is that we try to educate other people to also live by those. And this is something that's really common with parents, is they often ask, how do I teach this wisdom to my children? How do I help other people? And the message coming time and time again from the Guru is, this is nothing to do with you. This is all to do with grace. So you might have really good intentions to try and help other people, and you might want to put a lot of effort to help others. And while that's a great thing to do because you're sharing the wisdom that's benefited your life, you want other people to benefit from that, that's you giving your time and effort to improve someone's life, you need to have a sense of detachment on whether they will be able to receive it or not, whether they'll be ready to pick up that wisdom itself. Your effort is to try, but you shouldn't get disheartened if someone else isn't ready to receive. If someone's not ready to take this wisdom on board, then that's not on you. You've put that effort in to try and help them. And you have to reflect that there was a time in your life where you didn't understand this wisdom. There was a time in your life where you weren't ready to live according to these principles. You didn't always think in this way. And in the same way that we shouldn't judge someone else because they're not ready, we also shouldn't get disheartened if they're not going to be the person who's ready to receive this right now. And that becomes a really difficult thing for us to accept, because we feel that everyone should be living according to our principles. We feel like our children must and should carry on our belief systems, our traditions, our understanding, the wisdom that's helped us. We have to do everything that we can to help them. And what we're not including in that equation is the element of grace. What we're forgetting is that we're not responsible for how we think now. We're not responsible for how we've been blessed to have this understanding in our life. And so in the same way, we need to understand that if they are to receive that wisdom, it really is the Guru's blessing. It's the blessing of the enlightener, which is that spirit of oneness giving itself in the form of wisdom to our minds. And remember, it's not our mind, it's the mind of the oneness. So when you take a step back and you see it for the play that it really is, you realize it's just God playing with God, God being the invisible oneness, God being the physical manifested form, God being the ignorance and God being the wisdom, God deluding one part of itself and then creating the enlightener to enlighten another part of itself. So it's this beautiful game that if you can take that step back for a moment and just see it for what it really is, you start to detach yourself from ideas of helping others, doing good for others, making them think in the same way as you. Yes, by all means, we should try and help them, but don't have this grasp on this idea that they must be like that, because it's really all down to divine grace. And so when we understand this, Guruji carries on, now says, Ek param pule phire deh dis. Some people roam deluded and mistaken in 10 directions. Some people are aimlessly walking through life in so many different ways. And it just takes on from an idea that we saw in verse 6, where Guru says, Esno hor thao nahi shabad lag savarya. Without this divine connection, without this understanding, this realized way of living, they have no other place. Nobody has a place in the world. Everyone is wandering around looking for something to fill their life with bliss. And Shabad Lag Savarya, when they find that bliss, when they find that wisdom carries them across. It takes them to the new way of thinking. So when you are without this wisdom, the Guru is explaining that you're wandering around life aimlessly, not knowing where to go. It's walking in the dark and just feeling around and hoping for the best. And the Guru comes along with the light to show you this is the path, this is the way, this is what your life is capable of, this is what your life is really meant to be for. And so your connectedness is the way home. You finding your connectedness to this oneness is you realizing this is what I always was. This is what all human beings, regardless of religion or gender or grace or sexuality or whatever, this is for every plant and every animal. We're all part of this one thing. And your true home is when you realize your connectedness. you transcend your limitations, you transcend the body, you transcend your mind, you transcend your attachments, and you realize that your true home is here within you, within your understanding of your true self. But until you're in that place, everything is just going to be a wandering around, aimlessly trying to find a way to feel whole. And that's really all we're trying to do. Everybody is born knowing that life feels empty. This is what every single man, woman, and child spends their life trying to solve, the ultimate problem, that within them something feels empty. And we spend all of our effort trying to fill our life with things to try and fill this emptiness inside of us. We know deep down that something is missing. And this is what Guru is calling parampule. When you know something is missing, but you're looking in the wrong places. You're deluded in your search to fill that emptiness. And unknowingly, we spend our whole life using Maya, using the physical world as the way to fill a non-physical void that's inside of us. And we do that through relationships, through possessions, through ideas and opinions, through hobbies, through identities, things that we think are important, things that we think are going to change our life and give us some status and good reputation in society. All of these things are ways in which we feel like that's how we're going to fill that hole within our life. This is a journey that's going to carry on for most people all throughout humanity. This is the journey from birth to death. This is what keeps happening. From the moment you're born, the more that you identify with the physical world, the more that you identify with your body, the more your sense of emptiness is going to increase. Because what does it mean to be whole? Being whole means I realize I am part of the whole. The whole, the oneness, the totality, and me are the same thing. The more the wave identifies with the wave, being a wave, acting like a wave, looking like a wave, the more it's going to feel distant and far from the ocean. And from birth, as you carry on through your childhood, youth, adolescence, adulthood, all of this time, you increase the things that you identify with, the things that you think are mine, the things that you hold on to. And the more you do that, your separation from your true nature increases. This is why people go through these midlife crises and they think everything I've done with my life is wrong. Now I'm going to try a whole bunch of new things. Or some people renounce their life and they say, now I'm going to try spirituality. Because they realize that I've been trying to fill this emptiness for far too long and the outside way hasn't worked. The path of walking and around the world and trying to find ways to fill that void hasn't worked. So the more your individuality develops, your sense of separation is going to increase. And Guru is saying that some people are just wandering around like this their whole life. One person is just walking around deluded and mistaken in 10 directions. But then there's the other way. Naam lag savariya. There's the other way, the other path, where attaching yourself to this Naam, to this awakened understanding, those people actually progress in life. They actually do what life is capable of doing. So there are those who are in the realized state and they do something that goes against the grain. Whilst everyone else is looking outside, they have found that there's another way to look inside. They are going in the opposite direction. It's as though they are swimming against the tide of the traditions, norms of human culture, and they are swimming in the opposite direction. The river is now flowing in a different direction for them. So they're taking this unique path, this direction that is to go within yourself. And that direction is to say that the physical world cannot offer me what I need, cannot offer me my true home, will not help me find my true place in life. The truth is that I am part of something far greater. I am not limited to this body. I am part of the whole itself. So once you begin to transcend the idea of the physical world, the ideas and attachments that we have towards life itself, you will start to go within yourself. And again, I just want to repeat this idea that it doesn't mean that you stop doing anything. It doesn't mean that you stop enjoying the world. It just means that you stop identifying with the world. You know it's there. You are a part of it. This is a divine play. But your identity with your true nature, it never gets broken. You always know that this is not who I really am. I am part of something much bigger than this. So the Guru has used this word savarya quite a few times. It says that only people who have Naam, this awakened understanding, they are savar. They are carried across. That's what the word savarya means. That they're carried across the difficult ocean of life. The difficulty of what it means to be a human being. The struggles of the human experience is what they transcend, because their outlook on life has changed. Their outlook on themselves has changed. We have an outlook based on attachments and holding on to things, and the enlightened has the outlook of detachment, of letting go of things. And we have to understand what a big grace it is to be able to be allowed to live a life like this. There are going to be some people who are called the wanderers, that Guruji is calling, the people who are wandering aimlessly around life. There are going to be those who even come across this wisdom, but for whatever reason, it's not their time. They're not ready to pick up this wisdom. For whatever reason, the divine play decides that for them, they're not ready to receive this wisdom, even though they might come across it. And it all comes down to what Guru says next. Gur Prasadi Man Paya Nirmal, Jinna Pana Pave. By the Guru's grace, the mind gets purified. The mind emerges pure for those people who are pleased by divine will. Guru uses a very interesting word here, nirmal. The word mal means dirt. Nirmal means that which is without dirt, the unsoiled, the pure, the one that has been cleaned. So the Guru is implying that by the Guru's grace, the mind can become cleaned. Cleaned of what? Cleaned of your attachment, cleaned of your ego, your sense of individuality, your sense of control, your identifying with the physical world. The Guru cleans that away from you. And how does the Guru do that? The Guru again makes this link between Naam, which is what the Guru has been talking about for the last few lines within this verse, and then now introduces another word called Pana. Notice how every verse is talking about the same thing, but the Guru uses different phrases and terminology. And if we don't look at this deeply, we might think that every verse is bringing in new concepts, but we see time and time again, it's just the same concepts that are coming in. But Guru's using new words to help our minds understand in a different way. You didn't understand it in verse number 5 or 6 or 7. Here's a different word. Here's a different way of understanding it. So here the Guru uses the word Pana. Pana directly means Hukam, the divine way. So Guruji is saying that Naam and Pana are related. So Naam is not just a mantra or a word. Naam is to accept the divine system. Guru's clarifying that Naam is not a word, but it's an awakened state, a way of being totally aware that you and the oneness are just part of a system. I like to think of Hukam as a system, a divine system. And even the word divine, it's really important that whenever we use these words, you don't inherit human-like characteristics that we might make of God. So we might, when we use the word God, you think of like a human-like character. If I say divine or all these things, you start thinking that there's some guy in the sky who is controlling all of this stuff. And really, Guru's saying time and time again, no, it's not about a God in the sky. It's about the system of the universe, the universal system, which is called Hukam. And the best way that I've used that I've been able to understand this word Hukam is to think about the flow of life. The divine flow, if you are pleased with the divine flow, if the way life flows pleases you, then you're in Naam. If you think like that, that's being called grace. So many people talk about meeting God, merging with God, finding a connection with oneness. But Guru Nanak's path has always made it very clear. If you go with the flow of life, that is how you find God. There is no God sitting behind the flow of life. God is the flow of life. The very way that life flows is God itself. So accepting the divine flow, accepting how life goes, is to meet God. And it comes down to a very simple idea. You can't love God without loving what God does. Everything that is happening in this moment, and we like to think about the world as being full of chaos, and there's so many evil things that are happening in the world, and there are children starving, and there are wars and famines going on, and so much mental illness and mental problems in the world, so many things that we struggle with. And then we claim to want to find God, and we want to look at God, but we're not happy with the world, we're not happy with how this is. The divine way of taking a step back and looking at all of this and saying all of this is part of the divine system. Now, I'm not saying that we don't change anything in the world and we just let absolutely chaos run amok. That's not what we're saying. What we're talking about is where you are moved to make improvements in the world, go and do it. That's fine. But don't judge the world for the way it is. Don't have this judgment that I am like this and I am better than you. I'm not an evil person, I'm better, you are an evil, you're a bad person. Because then you're lost in this idea that I am me, I control my thoughts and my habits, and you control your thoughts and your habits, and you're forgetting the bigger picture. One wave having an argument with another wave is pointless, because neither of them understand that they're part of the ocean. Now, you can have an issue with all the other waves, but the problem is not the waves. The problem is your understanding. You've forgotten that sometimes the ocean is calm and sometimes the ocean is very rough, and some really big waves and some terrible things that happen when the ocean is rough. But it's all part of the ocean. It all happens all the time. You cannot say this is good or bad. So when you start to get in line with the flow of life, when life is flowing a particular way and your mind is also in total acceptance of that flow with everything that is happening, that is called Naam. So in verse 5 we see the word Naam being called Shabad, Panch Shabad, Kala, universal force, awakened word, and here the word Pana is being used, the divine will. All of these words mean Hukam. They all mean exactly the same thing. The natural order of life is the divine will. So we need to understand that life has a flow. And a way to understand it is that your body is already in line with the divine flow. Your body is flowing with life. It's doing what it needs to do. It's aging completely independently of you. It's growing completely independently of you. It's breathing without you. Your heart is beating without you. Your lungs and your organs are all functioning without you. Your body is actually in complete alignment with the flow of life. It is born, it grows, and it dies all according to the system of life. Your mind, on the other hand, is the one that resists the flow. Your mind is the one that is stained with the idea that it does some things independently of the flow. And we talked about in some of the earlier verses how we can demonstrate that your mind is also part of the flow. It's also just a thoughts generating machine. That's what it does. The mind is a machine that generates thoughts. There isn't a thinker of your thoughts. You don't create your thoughts. Your mind is on autopilot. And the more you allow your mind to be influenced by different things, it'll have an impact on what kind of thoughts are flowing. But if your mind is constantly producing thoughts, and from that it has an idea that I'm going to hold on to this thought and I'm going to act on it, that's also another thought. But in that whole system, the mind somehow develops this little bug in the system where it says, I am the creator of these thoughts, I am the doer of these things, and I am the ones that are acting these things out. And it's the I am, that's the only small thing. It's such a small little thing that breaks our entire connection with the universe. And the enlightened masters that have understood this have stood back and they've laughed at how silly this small little thing called I am, how silly it is, how small it is, that when they go looking for it to destroy it, they realize it's not even there. It's so small, it's so insignificant, and yet it has so much significance in how we look at life. So the mind, when it is in unison with this divine flow, that's called Naam. And that's when it is pure, because it is unstained. It's no longer stained with the false delusion that it is in control. That is why Guru has said that this is the Nirmal mind, the pure mind, the mind that has been cleaned from the stain of the self, the stain of the ego. And when you are in total non-resistance, total acceptance, when you are in that state of being connected, then you start to rejoice in life. Life becomes something that you celebrate. Life becomes something which is not a struggle, because you are flowing with the flow of the divine way. You become free and life becomes joyful. And Nanak ends, Kahe Nanak, Jis dehe pyare soi jan pave. Nanak says again, to whom you give, O beloved, only that servant receives this. The mind completely surrenders the idea that I am capable of creating my own awareness and my own understanding, my connectedness. I'm not in control of this. I surrender even that. And I just want to stay with the Guru, so the Guru keeps reminding me that everything is in the divine flow. And this state has been called a gift, a blessing, a grace, because only through the flow can you meet the Guru. Because of this divine system, some people will come across the Guru, this wisdom. How do you control whether you're going to find the Guru in your life? You don't go and actively seek the Guru. An idea pops into your head that I think I need something more. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this wisdom. And that idea popping into your head is the Guru popping that idea into your head. It's not you. You do not create those thoughts. So even your own enlightenment has to be part of this flow. It's not something that's outside of it. And the more and more you understand this idea of flow, the more you will realize these teachings. And you begin to realize that this idea of flow isn't just something that you can read. You can't just read this knowledge. It has to become so fundamental to your experience of life itself. And when you understand that this flow is in charge of everything else, then it answers that question that we started this session with, was how do I help someone else? And you realize that no one can be forced to be awakened. Nobody can be trained, nobody can be encouraged, and nobody can be shown so deeply that we make them change. The only thing that we can do is that we can, if we feel we know anything, if we feel that this wisdom has benefited our life in any way, we can show it to a few other people. We can try and pass it on to whoever we can. We can try and expose our friends, our family, our children to this wisdom. But we cannot be responsible whether they will get it or not, because every person is individual, and who knows what journey they need to go on for them to come out the other side, to realize the things that you realize in order to be on this path yourself. Who knows what they need to go into? So we can show people, we can encourage people to understand it, but we must take a step back and realize this is all the Guru's grace. Nothing is happening outside of the grace. So we have to have a part of our mind that just surrenders to accepting that this is all part of the divine system. And remember, that's the biggest part of your divine experience. You surrender to everything that is happening in life. And when you surrender, you begin to understand that everything is the divine flow. Answer these questions either by yourself or in a group. Does being helpless mean we should do nothing and wait for grace? What are some of the ways in which you wander through life in ignorance? How can we become pleased with the flow of life? What does a pure mind mean in your life?